and welcome to another quilt story. Today I'm going to be talking to Sarah Fielke, who I've known for many, many, many years. I dread to think how many. I've watched her develop her style and her following, and it's really lovely to have the opportunity to see her in her new studio, and we're going to have a little look of that later. So I'd like to welcome you, Sarah.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. I'm going to flick straight to the screen sharing. Sarah, you're becoming very famous for your block of the months, and I know you've been doing them for a few years now. This one was last year's, is that correct?
Yes, that's right. This was last year's. So last year was the 5th year that I've run the block of the month program, and coming home was my 2019 quilt.
How many people sign up for your blocks of the month?
Well, the first year that I did it, it was a bit of an experiment, and every time I do an experiment, I sort of hope that maybe, I set myself a target. So I set myself a target of between 100 and 200 people. And yeah, now I get about 2,000. So yeah, it does really well, which is just wonderful. And I think last year we had people from, I think I counted 20 different countries or 21 different countries. So it's just, yeah, it's really fun.
And you have sort of chat groups and things that they all talk to each other?
Yeah, that's right. So the whole thing's run online. There's no fabric sent or anything like that, which I've done really consciously because a lot of my fan base is overseas, and so much of your money gets taken up with packages being shipped from Australia all over the place. So the idea is you use your own fabric. Everything's online, then everybody can just log in and watch the videos and look at the patterns, and then there's no sort of hassle for anyone. Everyone can do it in their own time, essentially.
Yes, you wouldn't want to be trying to package up 2,000 fabric.
No, it was a decision I made very early on, and it's one I'm quite glad that I did make, because we do at the beginning of the year have there's an optional template set for each one of the quilts. And there's notions and what have you, but it's a sort of a one-off posting. So at the beginning of the year, there is a massive pile of packages that we send out 50 a day over a couple of weeks to get them out all around the world, which is, my kids are becoming very, very good at wrapping things in Sarah Fielke tissue paper and stamping.
And I know your husband, Damien, is an enormous help to you with all this as well.
Yeah. Damien is half my business. If Damien didn't exist, there wouldn't be a website, there wouldn't be all sorts of things. He does all things that aren't actual quilt related.
Yep, it's wonderful to have a supporting husband, isn't it?
Oh, it so is. Yeah, I couldn't do it without him. I really couldn't.
No. Okay, so this is your final version of the quilt, and it starts off as a drawing. Yeah,
so the way that the block of the month runs is that the sign-ups open in October. So obviously the 2021 quilt will open this October. And what everybody gets is actually a black and white drawing, essentially, in the beginning that has no colour on it. And that's all you see. But it's not an exact replica of the quilt, but it is as close as I can get in my hand drawing to what the quilt's going to look like. And then as we sort of go through the coming months, because you start signing up anyway in October, and then the quilt doesn't actually open until January. So in the months leading up to that, you get different colours of the quilt, different ideas of fabrics to use, and you actually get your own black and white drawing of the quilt that you can then use. We use an app called Recolor. And you can go in and just tap on the screen on your smartphone or your iPad and drop all your own colours in and all that sort of stuff and play with how you'd like your quilt to look, which is really fun, because the idea that nobody's actually sent fabric means that at the end of it, we have quilts in every colour of the rainbow, and it's so much more fun to see than everybody just making a quilt out of a kit.
This is the centre block made up in fabric?
That's right. So this is my centre block. And when we started, the first month was that first little star in the middle with the little 8 houses around the outside. So as we move through the quilts, the way that they essentially work is that everything gets more difficult as you go along. So you don't get presented with a difficult skill until you've learned how to do it in a more easy setting. So the little houses and everything are quite simple. The first applique that we did was those little circles, and I have a magic circle trick that I teach everybody. So they all learn the magic circle trick. And then the second month after that was doing the points, the outer points on the star, and those round circles with the stars in the middle. So you can see that we then build on our circle technique and then learn how to do points and inside points. And then the tulips after that. So the applique has sort of gotten progressively more difficult or more skilled, I suppose, as we go through. And there's videos and, you know, extensive tuition on how to do absolutely every single step, including matching points and all sorts of things.
I love your drawings. They're really quirky.
Thank you.
Part of your style is a combination of piecing and applique. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. These next few little drawings are just a few ways that the quilt can actually be customised. So you can see the difference it makes in the star as to where you place your fabrics. And we have a lot of discussion about how to actually make your quilt your own and how to make, you know, take my design and put your own little spin on it. So that centre block that I made with the star and the tulips and everything, there's, you know, lots of help given on how to place your colours or your tones and values to make the quilt be your own creation. And that's what those little drawings are.
This is your quilt again?
This is my quilt again, yeah. So it's just more of a close-up of those little houses. The other thing I really love to do when I'm appliquing is to fussy cut. So you should be able to see my ladies of the night that were in all the windows there. They're like little can ladies. And then there's dogs sitting in the doorways. And of course a unicorn in the middle, because, you know, you have to have a unicorn.
Is the unicorn your sort of motif?
I love horses and unicorns in general. I like anything sparkly. I like rainbows and I like pink. I'm a bit of a girl.
Okay. So do you make your quilt up before everyone else makes theirs, or do you make it up along with them?
No, so the way that I do it is I start making the quilt a couple of months ahead. So I'm not finished when the block of the month starts. Mm-hmm. And I've done that really consciously because it means that as we go along, I can actually listen to what people are saying and the questions that they're asking me in the Facebook group and online. And then I'm able to work that into the video. And I'm also able to work it into how the quilt's made. So if, for example, I had feedback that absolutely everybody had trouble making those points in the tulip or something like that, I might redesign a flower that's further out in the border to make sure that it doesn't have those deep curves again. Yeah, and it just gives me a bit more control over making the quilt to suit everybody and making it easier for everyone. So yeah, this next border out, all these little houses, this came out over 2 months worth of the quilt. And each one of the houses, the body's pieced, just normally machine pieced, and then the roofs are all foundation paper pieced. And then we applique the little houses, the little doors and windows over the top. So you learn, you know, quite a few different skills as you go along. And that's been my goal with doing these quilts too, is that as you go along, you get to learn some different things that you might not have tried before or that you might have had trouble with. They're a bit of a combo, those houses.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's great that you have all the different techniques because, you know, there's some classic blocks in there that you may have made or you may have skipped that class or and your star blocks and getting your applique right. And applique is not something that I've ever been any good at all. But,
you need a class lesson.
Indeed, yeah. Okay, so here we've got some applique being added on.
Yeah, so that's the next step onto that pieced border. So each one of those houses has been pieced of its own accord. The border's all been pieced and you can see those little rounded corners there. Each one of the borders on this quilt is actually rounded and then the quilt ends up with rounded corners.
Oh, okay.
It was a really, really fun technique to do because as you build the quilt out, the inside of the quilt changes and you get these sort of rounded shapes coming together between the borders. So I think that was a really fun surprise for a lot of the students making it who sort of didn't realise at this stage what those little rounded corners were going to do. And then when we got the next border on and they were like, oh, wow, look, you know, my quilt's got circles in it. So yeah, once we pieced all the little houses, we then put the applique on the top.
Mhm.
And then there's some embroidery added for the kite tails and some little raindrops coming out of the clouds, but we didn't do that until the whole top was finished. So
Embroidery as well.
yep.
Oh,
I do my best to pack as much in as I possibly can.
once your block of the month is done for the year, is that it, or can people buy the pattern? Or
No, so what I do afterwards is I actually publish I'm self-publishing the patterns as a book. The books are available from my website, and they're also available on Amazon. And the books come with all of the video was put together for the block of the month. So once you've bought the book, you send your receipt to my husband, my ever long-suffering husband, and he will open up an account for you at our website, and then you can go in anytime you like and look at the videos and what have you, and that access remains yours for however long. So yeah, so if anyone was interested in this quilt or indeed the other ones prior, they're all available, and so are the template sets that go with it. And then the 2020 block of the month will be the same in January.
clever. Now, I got really confused when I saw this because I couldn't work out what the background fabric was. It's not fabric, it's your floor.
That's right. So we've recently moved house, but before we moved house, my studio was a little cabin in the back garden, a little wooden cabin. Mm-hmm. And the floor of it was not finished when we built it. It was just like a chipboard. So I photocopied a whole lot of my pages from my books and my fabric designs and my applique and all sorts of things. And then I Mod Podged them all to the floor. And then we had the floor sealed with a floor sealant afterwards. So that's actually the floor of my studio.
Wow. What did the buyers of your home think about your studio?
I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. They didn't really comment on it, but I know that the couple that bought it, that she is a potter. So I'm assuming, yeah, that she was planning to use that for her studio. So I don't know, perhaps the floor's still there, covered in splashes of
yes,
pottery and clay. And
this is you sort of placing fabrics or just auditioning fabrics for your borders?
Yeah, so when I got to this stage of the quilt, I try to make sure that everybody can see my process as I go along too. I take lots of photos and sort of talk about how I came to decisions. And when I first planned the quilt, I had all of the houses in this next border were going to be blue because the border before was all pink and it was all going to be pink and blue. So that was all great. And I got it all on the floor and looked at it and went, no, I really hate that. I'd cut a whole lot out and I'd coloured my thing for the month and all of that stuff. So then I had to have a bit of a rethink, and then the next slide should show you what happened. And yeah, if you're me, you can look at that and just go, that's much better, much more balanced and what have you. So we ended up with pink houses. But that's the sort of thing that I like to talk through with everybody in the videos and all of that sort of stuff, and just say, okay, so you've all coloured your sketch at the beginning and you've all decided on this perfect colourway that you're going to have for your quilt. When you get there and it doesn't work, that's fine too.
I think we're on a design wall now. So
yeah,
we've come off the floor.
That's those pieces that I was just talking about actually pieced into houses. Lovely. So again, the houses are all pieced, the little chimneys and what have you, and then the windows and doors are appliqued onto the top, and the trees are all appliqued, and those pieces are actually worked as single houses and then stitched together in blocks, so that you're never having to carry that great border around with you everywhere to applique by hand. I should say too that all of my applique pieces are suitable for machine applique. So even though I teach hand applique, it's all perfectly fine for fusible. So if that's what floats your boat, that's absolutely fine. So this is what happens in the next part of the quilt. And the reason that I had this slide in there was those little bird corners that go on were the next part of the month. But you can see in this sketch that each house is labelled. Yes. And that's kind of how we work through the pattern. So it's all very methodical, and I know it looks like a huge amount of volume and design choice, but everything's very methodically planned out. Every piece of instruction is very methodically planned out and organised into groups so that you're actually working on a small amount each month and not being presented with this kind of, oh, go away and make a massive decision immediately.
Looks like we've come to the final border, I think.
That's right. So this is the sketch that they will have gotten right in the very beginning when they first signed up, or when you first see the big reveal of the block of the month for each year. This is how it looks. And then once you sign up, you get sent this so you can colour it. You can start to plan your own quilt. You can see particularly on this one all those rounded corners that we were talking about before. And then when you see the finished quilt. So this is actually how from that first picture that had all the blues and faded blues and things, this is how mine actually turned out. So you can see that as you sort of go along, everything works its way through, I suppose. And I like to make sure that everybody gets a lot of information about how and why I've done all those things and made all those design choices. And there's the finished quilt. How's it quilted? So unfortunately, even though I like to hand quilt everything, the block of the month quilts, I just don't have time because of the way that I make them. They're not made, a long time in advance. I want to have them finished for the end of the program so that everybody can see my finished quilt. And I just don't have time to then hand quilt a queen size quilt top and have it ready to go and photographed and the book ready and all of that sort of stuff. So it is machine quilted. I usually just have an edge to edge done on them because they're so detailed and, there's so much going on in them that I just let the applique speak for itself and be done with it. So it was just machine quilted.
A wonderful project.
Thank you. It's a fun quilt. All my quilts are cheerful.
So here are your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many books have you written? Heaps.
Seven. So there's actually one missing there. Material Obsession 2 is missing, mainly because half my studio is still in boxes from our move and I couldn't actually find a copy of it. It's not in print anymore. So I didn't actually have a copy of it handy, which seems amazing, but I didn't. Material Obsession was my first book, and I wrote that and Material Obsession 2 with Kathy Doughty.
How long ago was that? Because that's when I first met you.
Yeah, so that, I think it's coming on 12 years ago now. I left Material Obsession, I think, about 9 years ago now. So, that'd be about right. And
you haven't stopped since?
No. Well, it was, it was one of those, if you've heard of Material Obsession, it was sort of a really big name in quilting at the time, and it was a really huge decision for me to leave, and I really wasn't sure if I'd ever do anything else. I sort of left thinking, oh, well, that's it now. No one's going to want to know me now. I'm not Material Obsession anymore. But my absolutely wonderful publisher, Murdoch Books, came to me and said they wanted me to do a solo book, and so that was Quilting from Little Things. That was my first solo book, and then it's just kind of gone on from there. So these are the block of the month books, all available with the videos. You can see the full quilts all out properly on my website, and the other place that it's really good to have a look at the quilts and the program and how people are interpreting it is Instagram. If you want to go onto Instagram and just look for the hashtag Sarah Fielke block of month or Sarah Fielke BOM, you'll find everybody else's pictures of all of the quilts over the years, which is really fun. I mean, they're just a million different colours, and people have done their own borders or whatever else, and it's really fun to see.
What is this?
So this is actually the centre for the 2020 block of the month, which is called Growing Wild. This year we've had 2 programs. So this is the 12-month program, and it's a medallion quilt. This is the centre, and then there are striped applique borders around the outside. There's a lot of applique this year, which I've done because I was asked for it. A lot of people said, can't you just do one that's all applique? So I couldn't quite do all applique, those stripes behind a piece. Yeah. And there are a few triangles and what have you in the border, but it is predominantly applique, and this is the centre. So we've just finished here and we've moved out to the borders this month.
Right.
So you can still sign up for the program. The idea behind it is that it actually stays open until the 2021 one releases. And when you sign up, you get all the patterns and the videos, and you can just work at your own pace, or you can obviously wait until the book comes out. And then this quilt is the 6-month program, A Little Wilderness. So this is a throw size, rather than being a big bedside size quilt. It's more of a bit of a taster, I suppose, if you wanted to try applique, or you've never done anything like my block of the months before and you just weren't quite sure. It's 6 months worth. So it's just started again. If anyone's interested in jumping in, we've got a whole flock of new people who are piecing their backgrounds and learning to applique hearts at present.
All the links to all your amazing projects and your website and your Instagram are in the description box below. So please check them out and make Sarah happy. Give Damien something more to do, because he doesn't have enough to do.
Keep him busy.
You've also connected with Aurifil Threads.
Yes, I've been designing with Aurifil for 7 years now. I'm an Aurifil ambassador and an Aurifilosopher, which means that basically that I'm qualified to lecture about Aurifil thread. It all started out when I was at Houston Quilt Market, I think probably about 10 years ago. And I went to Alex Farinelli and I said, I'm Sarah Fielke from Australia, and I like doing hand quilting with pearl cotton, and I would like you to do some pearl cotton and I'll help you do it so that we have a big stitch quilting collection. And he said, no, we don't do pearl cotton. And I said, well, but you need to, because it's a thing and it's a growing thing, and, you know. Anyway, when I got home, he sent me a huge package full of their 12 weight, which is essentially a pearl cotton, but it's a nicer grade, I suppose, of cotton. It's nice and thick. It's not so thick as a pearl 8, which is what I always quilted with when I was at Material Obsession. It's a bit lighter, and you get a much nicer stitch definition, I think. Anyway, I quilted a whole lot of quilts with it, and he won me over. And so I emailed him back and said, yes, all right, I believe you now, you don't need to do pearl 8. And he said, well, come on then, do a collection. So I've been designing with them ever since. The Big Stitch Quilting collection's been out now for several years, but it's still widely available. It comes in a small packet that has 10 different colours of small spools in it. It also comes in a large box. And then my Everyday Applique collection's just been released, which is 80 weight thread on the small wooden spools, and that's what I use for doing all my hand applique. Beautiful fine thread, like a little hair, and that's got 20 different colours of beautiful thread in it that I absolutely love. So
you're amazing. I was at Houston when you had that conversation with Alex, and I remember you going, no, it's got to do pearl cotton.
It's got to be 8. It's got to be pearl 8. You know, yeah. No, he won me over. He was right.
Great. You recently moved house, so you inherited what I assume is the basement. Is that correct?
No. So the house, it's a really unusual house that was designed in the 70s by an Australian architect who was designing very modern concrete houses. And to be honest with you, it's not the sort of house I ever thought I would want to buy. It's very modern and there's lots of glass, and I've always liked, you know, cottagey sort of houses. Yes, but we walked into this house and it's in the middle of the bush. I'm completely surrounded by bush and sort of semi-rainforest. There's birds everywhere. We look at the water. I can't see another neighbour for miles. And it's just the most beautiful house. And we just fell in love with it and moved straight in. But the problem with it was there was nowhere for a studio. So underneath the house actually sits on, like if you imagine your hand standing up like that, and the house is sitting on the top.
Okay.
And these pillars actually run all the way up through the house like a skeleton, and it sort of embraces the house and it's sitting in it like this. It's very unusual. And then underneath the house was this void where the spikes actually were. They go all the way around in a circle. My dad calls it the vortex. So what we did was we built a room inside half of that vortex. The other half of that is actually outside the windows. So when I look out the window, I'm looking at the other half of it, which is grey, just plain grey columns and pebbles and a garden. And inside we put just a polished concrete slab down, built a lot of cupboards, and painted the columns in a rainbow. Of course. So I had my boys down here helping me put up design walls and do all of those things you need to do in a studio. But having worked in a very small sort of 3 by 3 metre box studio for a long time, I'm now working in, despite the columns, what have you, which obviously are a bit of an obstacle, I'm now working in sort of 7 metres by 14 or something. It's a huge space, and there's a whole wall of design wall, and it's just, yeah, it's wonderful. It's still not quite finished. I need to get cupboard doors on those cupboards behind me. COVID put a bit of a notch on that. The factory shut down. It's all right, we'll get there.
Well, it's wonderful that you have that space. It's a corner of your studio, and it looks to be unicorns.
It is. So, you know, there's a lot of walls to fill up in my studio, as you probably saw in that other picture. But this is probably my favourite corner in the studio. I collect art prints from other designers, and this is my favourite little collection of prints. Some of them are by Heather Ross, who's a fabric designer. Some by Sarah Watts, who is also a fabric designer for Ruby Star. Both of them are friends of mine, so it's lovely to have their pictures in my studio, and other bits and pieces. And then the unicorn there, it's probably difficult to tell the one that's framed. It's actually got an ice cream on its head that makes it a unicorn. And one of my best friends, Chula Pink, and I go to Sisters every year. We teach together, and we always room together, and we found those pictures together and bought them at Sisters, and so we both have it framed in our studios. That's my Chula unicorn. And then you can probably see at the side there what I'm looking out at. So when I look out my windows in all directions, that's what I'm seeing, is palms and Australian bush and bush turkeys and lorikeets and cockatoos and
Perfect.
Yes.
There you are. So I can see your cupboards more clearly behind you.
My cupboards that need their doors. They'll come.
That's okay. They look pretty amazing. That's been fascinating, Sarah. I've watched your block of the months grow in popularity over the years. Now that I know so much more about them, with all the techniques, I expect you'll probably get another flood of sign-ups very quickly when this goes to air. I'd like to thank you so much for your time today, and I hope everyone has enjoyed learning more about you and your block of the month and what you have to offer. If you've enjoyed this video, I really hope that you'll click on the subscribe button down below, please, because it just gives me inspiration to make more videos, and I'm meeting amazing people and also getting to chat with friends, which is really lovely. So thank you, Sarah. I hope that you continue to develop your amazing projects and write more books and just keep doing everything that you've been doing.
Oh, just try and stop me.
Exactly.
Thanks so much for having me, Lisa. It's lovely to see your smiling face. Hopefully we can actually catch up and have coffee soon when we're allowed out. When
we're allowed out, that'd be great.
People again.
Okay. So thanks, Sarah, and bye for now.
Bye.